There are two realities and two kinds of people. Each group of persons prefers a different sort of leader from the other. One leader is performative and the other pastoralist. This latter is the biblical model of leader. Pastoralists lead by example. The performative style of leadership is displayed by liberals. The exemplary performative leader being Canada's Justin Trudeau. Performative leaders act out policy, but this requires policy be emotionally based and indeed biased. Policy of the performative leader reflects the emotional bias of their supporters. What this tells us is that this division into two constituencies reflects a broader social division in the wider population. Some people are governed by emotion and others by logic. This might not seem to make any sense to some, but lies are always the product of feeling. They are never logical because lies are never moral or true. There is no other basis for a lie than emotion. A criminal does not wish to be caught and so lies about his whereabouts during the commission of the crime. But the true root cause of the lie is cowardice. Atheists especially are cowards, but fear is pervasive among liberals and the basis of fear is cowardice. The fear of confrontation leads to tolerance and what is called appeasement and empathy. The results are the same. Liberals make allowances for the behavior of others because tolerance allows liberals to avoid confrontation. This is not possible if one is logical or moral to be tolerant. If one has principles, one has to draw a line in the sand and refuse to cross it. People who live in fear abandon their principles. Cowards cannot afford a principled stand. But there is no logic that is able to justify cowardice, and so emotional justifiers are used in place of logic and reason. Naturally, cowards who lack principles will not embrace a principled leader. This is especially noticeable in many Western nations. Western cowards have embraced performative leaders who unanimously preach the conciliatory doctrine of Chamberlain appeasement. Unfortunately, Christians have tended to be impacted by the fear of secularists. Faith in God is not a risky endeavor unless one has a reason to fear others. But remember, we are not to fear those who can only kill the body. The sickness or sin that gives rise to fear or makes fear seem reasonable is avarice. Greed is a feeling that infects rich and poor, socialist and libertarian. When a person is greedy, other people are seen as competitors and a source of risk. Others are assumed to be after the property we are after and to pose a barrier to what we want. Therein lays the problem. Given greed, there will always be strife, and where there is strife, there is a need for arbitrators. Eliminating greed may seem an insurmountable problem. But the problem exists because of a presupposition, and that presupposition is that the world is not already owned. Liberals believe the world is a no man's land open to exploitation. In fact, it is not man's or no one's, it is the property of God. Of course, for people who do not believe in God, the world looks like manna from heaven available to anyone to scoop up and claim as their own. But this perspective brings us back to the problem of arbitration. If the world is open to arbitrary claims, there has to be an artificial method of arbitrating the claims. Anarchy is not a viable long-term strategy. What if there is only one water source in an area? We cannot fight over water for long before realizing there has no be some way of mediating the different needs. For most places, this other solution is the state. This issue of how to control the arbiter so he does not just use his office for his own benefit is ancient. It has been expressed as the issue of who polices the police or who judges the judge. At some point, someone or some group has the final authority. How do we put limits or constraints on this office? Putting sovereignty in the hands of a fictitious we the people is about the worst option there is. Not only does it allow for patronage and demagoguery, it creates a sense of irresponsibility. The blame can be attributed to the electorate, as if it was a sentient thing. Democracy is both a way for governments to avoid being where the buck stops and a way to defuse the situation. The electorate can always wait and vote out the person they object to. Democracy creates a situation where the average person no longer knows if he is a judge or the judged. The voter is both the person to blame for what goes wrong and the one to fix the problem. The need to supervise people wanting access to property creates a hierarchy of power in which the ultimate power lays with the powerless. There are only two options in life when discussing states of being: either we are equal or we are unequal. Either we all share the same level of power, or there is a pyramid of power. Either the organization is flat, or there are successive layers of authority where the higher strata wield more power than the lower strata. These are symptoms of the disease, not the disease. The real issue in the disease is sin. But that begs the question, what is sin? There is a clear and unequivocal line between good and evil that the performative leader would love to erase. Truth cannot be eradicated by logic, and so it is fought using emotion, particularly empathy. The performative leader appeals to the people's compassion, our tolerance, and even our charity. We compromise the good in a mistaken search for that which is higher than God. From our emotional height we seek to judge God, and when we do, secularists find him wanting. To sin is to freeload. Sin creates costs for communities. Sin is what the sinful like to call victimless crime, because the victim is the sinner and the sinner the prominent victim. Evil actions pass costs on to society and future generations. But even sin steals from others, but in a less direct way. Addictions make us less useful. Addictions and sin rob society of what we could have done had we not engaged in sin and addiction. Sin is a crime of omission and evil a crime of commission. One steals by default and the other steals by design. We are naturally sinners, but we are not evil by nature. Evil is a choice made by unconscionable free rider. There is a free riding that is meant to preference the free rider, but there is a free riding that is designed to kill or disable the host. The unforgivable sin is the act that destroys all pathways to faith. Once one has become an animal, there is no route back to humanity. At this point, one is a terrorist regardless of political affiliation or lack of it. There is no way evil, especially evil on this scale, can be justified, and so it is not, is covered over with what is essentially a displacement activity. We cannot deal with our fear and loathing, and so we reach out to hate mongers and destroyers with a false sense of compassion that justifies evil by means of our own ability to empathize. We make no effort to justify what cannot be justified. Liberals simply refuse to condemn because of the depths of their compassion for the afflicted. And for this they need a performative leader who can act out their compassion and empathy for all the world to see. Life is a stage, and what is the point in forgiving what is unforgivable if the world does not see your angst and overwrought sadness as you reach out to those whom not even God would forgive? Perhaps in some sick way liberals think that if they can forgive what God cannot, they will be seen as a higher being than God and have their own unforgivable sin forgiving in turn, by God. Forgiveness is a large part of the performative leader's platform. The performative leader not only forgives the unforgivable but forgives those who have never repented and those who did him no harm. The performative leader forgives all and sundry without exception or restraint. This unlimited and unrestricted forgiveness removes the possibility of repentance from the evildoer. He has been forgiven without repentance, and so what use is repentance? Yet, without repentance we cannot be saved. Nothing condemns a person to hell so surely as being forgiven when there has been no repentance.